Hello everyone, thanks for joining us for the Superintendent's Report. I'm Carol Birdsong, Communications Director for Williamson County Schools, and joining me for the next 30 minutes or so is Williamson County Schools Superintendent Jason Golden. We are going to break down the school board meeting, the January school board meeting, talk about action that was taken and discuss a few other things as we get this new calendar year started. Not a new school year, a new semester, but we have a lot going on actually this semester.
Well, it's interesting that you say we have a lot going on. It was a very busy school board meeting. We did some really key items, the school calendar. We talked about some of our celebrations. We've got a strategic plan going on, and we want to address many of those issues in this 20, 30 minutes.
Lot to cover, but we're going to start with celebrations. We honored 15 students who earned perfect ACT composites or a perfect ACT score last night. And really that, it's a wonderful celebration in that really that translates in, it's another way to save on college tuition for students, because typically when you get that perfect ACT score, you're getting a scholarship or two.
Well, you know, at our public board meetings, we've made a commitment that we will celebrate national and state honors, in part because, frankly, our students do so well and our teachers do so well that we've had to limit those celebrations to those statewide or those nationwide awards. And a perfect ACT is one of those great celebrations. That's something that those students will remember for the rest of their lives, and it really opens a lot of doors. So it is a major celebration for us when our students receive perfect ACT scores, perfect SAT scores, mainly because it shows that those students have some doors open to them for their next steps in life.
That's right. We had 44 students who were honored by the Middle Tennessee School Band and Orchestra Association for making either the All-State Band or the All-State Orchestra. And I think that really demonstrates the district's commitment to success in fine arts.
So I want to repeat that. 44 of our students made All-State Band and All-State Orchestra. And/or All-State Orchestra.
Yes.
That's an incredible number. We haven't touched chorus yet. I think that comes at a different time.
Not chorus or theater.
Yeah, so, and chorus and theater come at a different time during the school year, so we're very proud of those students. You know, you'll hear band directors and orchestra directors basically brag on their students. In essence, they say, not using these words, there's a direct relationship between performance in class and performance in those arts programs. And we see it. I'm sure there's folks who've done that research. I don't have research for you today, but we know that there is a relationship between high performance and high growth in the classroom and high performance in extracurricular activities. And so that's just a wonderful thing to celebrate when those students show that excellence in the arts.
Very important for student success, for sure. We also celebrated second grade teacher from Mill Creek Elementary School, Lauren Hawks. She was named the Literacy Association of Tennessee Reading Teacher of the Year. So quite an honor for her as well. And we did not dive into this, but we have begun to celebrate our Teachers of the Year.
Annually, every school selects their Teacher of the Year for their school. And we as a district select a Teacher of the Year at each grade band, elementary, middle, and high, and a Principal of the Year. The decision is made by a committee reviewing the work of those teachers on an annual basis. There's some recommendations from principals, and we go through that process through a committee. So it's a really exciting time for us to celebrate those district-wide Teachers of the Year. And we're a big school system, and we're doing really well high performance, and so it's a big deal to be named the district-wide Elementary Teacher of the Year, Middle School Teacher of the Year. Carol, and I've got the names.
I want you to, let's brag on those people.
So Allison Kosmarski is the elementary school teacher of the year. She's at College Grove Elementary. We went down and visited her. Her students agreed with us that her her award was appropriate, that she is the Teacher of the Year for Williamson County. So it was great to hear those elementary school students
They were cute.
tell us that we made the right decision because of their teacher. At the middle school level,
Allie Awesome.
Allie Isom, she's the theater teacher at Mill Creek Middle School. And that was a great celebration. And she is just so fine and perfect about presence, and she handled the award very well. That surprise, it's her profession to handle things like that well. And it was fun to give her that award again in front of her students.
And I always have to put in a plug for our theater teachers, and Allie is a leader in the area. If you have not taken in a middle school or high school theater production in Williamson County Schools, you should make an effort to do that this spring season, because the caliber performance, it is second to none. Our teachers do such a great job of getting all they can out of the performers on stage, and Allie's one of those as well.
And you've talked about, I know you over the course of your life have gone to Broadway a lot, and you talk about, you even compare some of the quality.
Listen, from costuming to everything, just the performance of our it's impressive. It really is.
And from my perspective, you have more leg room in our theaters than you might have on Broadway. So it's as an entirety, it's a great experience.
As you have shared, yes, we do. Yes, comfortable, pretty much comfortable, more comfortable seating. Okay, let's go to high school.
Centennial High School's Dina Tate was awarded the district-wide High School Teacher of the Year. We did a video with her students, and it was a great celebration. She's an ELA teacher, English teacher, at Centennial High School.
And I was a beloved teacher as well. We also celebrated our Principal of the Year, and that is the fabulous Kate Donnelly, who is our elementary school principal at Walnut Grove Elementary School. And I've worked with Kate for decades, and you have as well.
She's great, and she's been a teacher, she's been a counselor, she's been a counseling coordinator, she's been an administrator in our district. She's a great leader, and we're proud of her being the representative for Williamson County Schools at the state level. All of these award winners at the district level actually are submitted to the state as candidates for the statewide Teacher of the Year. So we're very proud of all them as excellent representatives of our excellent faculty and administration here at WCS.
And we wish them the best as they move on. So let's get into some of the other information and activity from last night's board meeting. I think probably tops on everyone's mind is the school calendar. And so we got a calendar adopted last night. We start back to school half day on Friday, August the 4th. And there was discussion about why we want to go back with a half day and why on a Friday and all that. Talk about why we have learned over the years it's so important to do that.
Well, we're a high growth area, and we have a lot of requirements for the parameters of our calendar from the state. Certain number of instructional days, instructional hours, instructional minutes, etc. And you really need to plan the calendar kind of backdated from the end of school. We want Memorial Day to be out of school. All graduations, et cetera, are done by Memorial Day. So when we work back, we work all the way back to the fall. We have found that Friday especially is the best date for us to start a school year for students, because we're in a high growth area. We have so many folks coming in. High schools have a lot of changes with schedules that first day. So it gives us some time to receive folks who are moving in, who have just come in that first day, get them schedules, and I'm just going to tell it like it is. Our counselors and our administrative staff, they end up working over the weekend, making sure that the schedules are in order. So high school is the most complex, but there's issues even at the elementary school, making sure you have the students in a classroom that's not over full, making sure those adjustments are made. So that gives us a little bit of time over the weekend. I know that occasionally a district might schedule the first day and then have a day off for students, and then the next day they hit school hard to accommodate this time. For us, having it over the weekend actually makes more sense than saying you got to come today, but you don't have to come tomorrow. Then you got to come the next day.
And typically when you arrive, especially at the upper grades, you go through the class schedule, you meet your teachers, that sort of thing, get a syllabus, and then you hit the ground running on Monday.
Well, that's right. And with our electronic system now, students are getting assignments online through our online system. So some of those old traditional, you got to get your assignments first. You know, you don't really need to do that quite as aggressively anymore, because students sometimes already have their assignments before they get there.
My goodness gracious, yes, we expect a lot, don't we? High expectations though, and that has worked well for us, I would say, over the years. Also in the calendar, students will get a full week fall break, they'll get a full week Thanksgiving break, 2 weeks at the winter holiday, spring break, and then yes, like you said, we graduation window is from May 24th through the 26th.
Our school board very much values community input on the calendar. And one item, we're actually, I think, going to be hitting our 3rd year in making sure that we have a full week of fall break, basically 2 weeks over the winter break, a full week of spring break. And so that lends to a very structured calendar to make sure all those times can come in. This is the 2nd year that we just experienced the fall break last semester. A lot of positive feedback. We went through a number of years talking about that before the change actually went into place. We've had a number of families over the winter break, say, hey, where's the calendar? Because I want to make my plans for fall break. And so it's now in place, and we have concluded that that's a really good structure, in part because our families have found that so.
So the board also, you asked the board to separate the vote on the calendar and the vote on late start, early release days. So for next year, we are going to continue on with how we've operated this year.
So I want to talk about instruction just a little bit. We know that in a high-performing school district, we have to continue to grow. Success is tenuous, and it takes constant attention, it takes constant evolution, constantly trying to find ways to do it just that little bit better. Last year, our students in the state testing, TCAP, were #1 in all 4 content areas, in English, in math, in science, and in social studies. And we celebrated that. But we can't just sit and say, hey, we're #1, and so we're going to continue things as is. We work to find time for teachers to really drill down with each other and collaborate on their individual students' mastery of the Tennessee standards. That's what we're about. Our mission is to teach students so that they master the Tennessee standards so that they can be prepared for the next step. Our vision statement talks about providing a supportive environment where students are challenged to excel in academics, athletics, and the arts, and this is a part of that. So on paper, boots hit the ground, we schedule some time for teachers to collaborate. They spend that time talking with each other, comparing how their students did on specific assessments, on tests, evaluating whether their students mastered particular standards, compare them to each other's mastery in different classes so that they can raise that tide for all students and have that time to talk to each other about those individual standards. The calendar committee asked for that time to be scheduled for all students K-12 on particular strategically placed Wednesday afternoons where the students release, I think it's 112 minutes early, 11 times a year on Wednesdays. That's what our elementary school students are doing this year. It's the first time for elementary school. We have a longer tradition of late start Mondays where the teachers at the secondary schools, middle and high school, get an extra 45 minutes, 27 times a year to do some of that planning. We have found, and the calendar committee found, that that works well, but it can be better. And that included moving those late start Mondays to the Wednesday afternoon schedule along with elementary school teachers. The idea is that they're strategically placed during the year after assessment so that teachers can adjust the way they teach, go back and spiral on particular standards that the students haven't met, etc. It's how we're going to grow that next step. When you're pressing up against the cap, you need to be more creative in how you grow students. You also need to look and say, okay, these students mastered this standard. What do we do now? How do we continue to grow our students even when they've mastered that standard? How do we drill in deeper? All those discussions are happening at our schools. What we learned from our board and from the community discussion after the calendar committee recommendation came out a few weeks ago is our community is not yet ready to change those late start Mondays. And so we acknowledge that. Our system is good now. We know it can be better. We're going to be spending the next few months looking into that deep discussion with our community. So short answer to your question about calendar is the structure for late start secondary schools and early release elementary schools are basically going to be on the same schedule as the current year. And we're going to have some strategic discussions related to where we go from here. What are our aspirations to continue to grow our students?
Speaking of strategic discussions, we are have begun actually our strategic planning process. We have achieved our goals from our current strategic plan, and so we are starting early to create a strategic plan for the next 5 years. So, if you will talk about that process.
So, we are currently under what we had set out to be a 7-year strategic plan. We're actually in year 6. You mentioned our goals. We met most of our goals. We have a combination of SMART goals and stretch goals. SMART's an acronym, so I encourage you to use a search engine and type out SMART goals. Dig through that acronym, achievable, etc. goals. But we had some stretch goals that we haven't quite achieved, but we made a lot of progress in our current strategic plan. We've had great success with that plan. It's time for the next one. And so we're going through that strategic planning process. I mentioned school start times, and those times. I'm convinced that that's going to be a discussion as we go through our strategic planning process this spring, this semester. So we have contracted with Lipscomb University to facilitate our strategic planning process. And we have had a couple of meetings with some smaller groups, some smaller stakeholder groups.
We've started internal.
We have started internal. Thank you for that. Our leadership team has met with them, and our teacher leaders. Some of our teacher leaders have already met with them. We're sitting here in mid-January right now. We have 5 community meetings scheduled, open to all stakeholders in our community, to go through the strategic planning brainstorming session, to help us develop community priorities, where we go from here. And I want to talk to that schedule. We have 5 meetings, as I mentioned. We have them set regionally. They're all in February, and I'm going to walk through those with a caveat that we've had this on our website. We're going to continue to advertise this because we want stakeholder participation. And when I say stakeholder, everyone in the county has a stake in our success. Over and over again, I hear from business leaders that school success is the reason their business is here, the reason they can recruit. And just the detail of the value in a high quality public education system for a community just can't be overstated. So 5 meetings. February 7th, we're going to be at Independence High School. Each one of these meetings starts at 5:30 and is scheduled to go from 5:30 to 7. 5:30 at Independence High School on February 7th. February 9th, Brentwood Middle. February 13th at Franklin High School, February 21st at Fairview High School, and February 23rd at Mill Creek Middle. So we've set them geographically. We hope that folks can come to one or more of those events. Our board has it on their calendars, and so many board members will be at each of those. And again, Lipscomb University's professional staff will be facilitating that strategic planning process.
And it's not a sit and get. I mean, we expect that if you're coming, you will engage in the process.
Thank you so much for that. When we went through this with some of our teacher leaders, building representatives from every school, I had a number of teachers come up to me afterwards and say, thank you so much, because I felt like I was part of the process. The reason they felt like they were part of the process is because they are. Likewise for our stakeholders. Lipscomb will talk about the details of it on those days, but the essence of it is we'll talk as a larger group. We'll break up into smaller groups. We'll go through a strategic planning session with each smaller group so that we can get those priorities, our aspirations for what Williamson County schools can be.
Okay, very good. Another topic last night was zoning. And when I say zoning, I mean open zoning. Schools that are open zone, the law changed, a couple of years ago. And so we do things a little bit differently. Will you explain that?
Sure. So we're in the second year of a law passed in Tennessee where school systems are to open up seats available at all schools that have room. We've done that for years, really for decades. We've had some open zoning. So it fits our annual calendar just like it always has, but there have been some adjustments based on this state law. Number one, the volume, the number of seats available has grown a little bit. We have historically open zone to try to reduce overcrowding at one school to allow students, if they choose to go to another school. It's more comprehensive now. Second, we used to do a first come, first serve, and we'd open the window and then we'd close the window. The state structure allows for a lottery system if more individuals want to go out of zone to a school than the available seats. And so we now have a deadline. So we're already in the process. April 15th is the deadline for someone to make an open zone request. Many of our schools are open based on a blank number of seats available. That includes us analyzing our growth projections, the capacity of particular school buildings, and our board policies that allow for some siblings to come on with their older siblings who might be open zone. It's a complex process for us to establish how many seats are available, especially in the high growth communities that we have. So many of our schools are open zone, not every school. Some of our schools are still very crowded, and we project they're going to be overcrowded in the coming years, really in just a year or two for some of our schools. So I encourage folks to get on our website if you're interested in the possibility of an open zone school. The deadline is April 15th for you to make that request.
And that information is there. Another note is if you choose to go out of zone and you are allowed to go out of zone, you must provide your own transportation.
That's right. One reality for schools across the country is a shortage of bus drivers. And it's all we can do right now to serve the routes we have. It is a practical impossibility to provide bus service to students out of their school zone. When we talk about school zones, they're transportation zones, so that the buses can, within the time allotted, get students to and from school on the bus. Out of zone means you provide your own transportation. I do want to mention one other item too. The board had a pretty deep discussion about the possibility of giving priority to certain students who are zoned to a high school where there might be a tiny percentage of a split feeder pattern. So we have a couple of examples of that, actually 3 across the district. What they voted on was if you were at a middle school where 15%, less than 15% of the total 8th grade population is zoned to a particular high school compared to another, then you could be a priority open zone to that school where the majority of your classmates are attending. So there's a couple of examples that will apply this year. One is Page Middle School. Right now, Page Middle School, about 14% or so of the students are zoned to Centennial, and 86% or so are zoned to Page High School. Those middle school students who are zoned to Centennial will have a priority within the available seats for Page High. Likewise, we've done some research this morning. Centennial is a priority for one of the Franklin Special School District's middle schools because they have a similar situation based on Franklin Special zoning. So again, the threshold is, if you're interested, look that up. I'll give you one quick example. We have 96 students at Centennial High School who attend out of zone and 91 students at Page High School who attend out of zone. So there is a little bit of balancing, choice for those. We're trying to increase choice when we can.
But again, you must provide your own transportation. Okay. All right, let's talk about the 3rd grade retention law that is here. It's been building, now it's here. So talk about that.
So 2 years ago, the legislature passed a law that in essence said starting this school year, if a student on TCAP, ELA, 3rd grade, performs at the state's definition of below expectations or approaching 2 of the categories in the state testing, they must engage in some additional instructional time in order to not be retained in the third grade and have to take third grade over again. It's a very complex law. We actually created a flow chart for ourselves to process through this law, but I want to give you some core pieces of it. TCAP is first administered in third grade. So third grade students will be taking that for the first time. If they score below basic or approaching expectations based on the state testing, they have an obligation, if they're below, to attend a summer school program, a 4-week program in June, and do tutoring the following school year. If they don't do both and meet some additional expectations for attendance in the program, some growth, there's actually going to be an assessment at the end. If they don't meet those expectations, we have an obligation to retain that student in third grade. So if you don't attend, if you don't show the growth that the state will establish as appropriate, the student will have to be retained in third grade. If a student shows approaching, if they fall within that category based on the state testing, then the student must do one or the other of those two programs so as not to be retained. Either go to the summer school program or commit to the tutoring in the following school year. There's a fourth grade element to that related to growth. The first cohort, the first group of students who are going to be affected by this are our current third grade students. So students at that level have not taken TCAP before. So we don't have a baseline for their TCAP testing. However, we do have an obligation by February 1st to let families know that their child might be at risk for this law. So we have other assessments, the work that our teachers do to try to give us some insight into projecting out which students might fall within that when they ultimately take those tests in the first week of April this year. So we have an obligation to notify parents just within the next week or so that your child may be at risk. That's based on some of our screeners, that's based on the work that our teachers are doing and teaching the standards to those third grade students right now. And so I just want to let everyone know those letters will be going out to those students who might be at risk. We encourage you to have conversations with your teachers, encourage you to have conversations with your principals about what this means. And please know that for many of these students, we're already engaging in interventions. We've been working on this since they showed up in kindergarten, and we're, as we continue to grow our students. Phonics is a big element of this, what we call foundational skills as students learn to read. The legislature has spoken to this a lot over the last 2 years. We know that there have already been bills related to this filed in the current legislative session. We don't know how any of those are going to turn out. What we know is that right now we need to plan for this and we need to help parents be prepared. The TCAP occurs the first week in April. We expect to get some of the test scores back in May. The summer school program starts in June. So the windows for these are going to be very tight and really ask you to stay engaged as a parent with your child's progress. We want to minimize that need for a student to be retained based on the requirements of the law. Sometimes it's appropriate. You know, there are some students who need to be retained, but right now that discretion has been taken away from the principal to have those deep discussions with parents if a student doesn't participate in these interventions if they are required.
I want you to say that again, though, because I think our viewers need to hear that. There is nothing that we can do at the school level.
If they don't meet the requirements, we have no discretion to retain a child in third grade starting this year.
All right. Thank you. Letters coming out soon for anyone who might be affected. As we wrap up our discussion, let's talk about math textbook adoption, because that is also happening and there are opportunities for the public to come take a look at textbooks.
Thank you for that. The state has a process of adoption of all our curriculum. And so they have, in essence, a 6-year schedule for most of our content areas. We are this year going through the math adoption process. It actually was delayed just a little bit. I think we're in our 8th year. We're finishing up our 8th year of our current math curriculum. Since that time, the Tennessee standards have changed. Some of the standards got moved from one grade level to the other, so our current instructional materials don't fully meet the Tennessee standards. To go through the adoption process, it takes state work and it takes local work. So the curriculum needs to be approved both at the state level and then ultimately at the district level. It takes 2 approvals. There's a lot of detail related to the process. The state gives us some choices. I'm very encouraged about where we are right now. The Tennessee Textbook Commission very clearly told these publishers that their materials must address all Tennessee standards in that grade level of mathematics work. They've told us they've only approved textbooks that address every Tennessee standard. So we have that narrowed choice based on their really good work. We then go through the process by establishing a committee to review, by having community input sessions, by our teachers having time to review the materials at their grade level, to ultimately have that committee make a recommendation to our board for which text to adopt. The board then adopts, and then we as a district make textbook purchases based on that board adoption. I'm actually very encouraged about where we are, mainly because we are looking forward to textbooks that meet the Tennessee standards. We haven't had that in math in the last few years. So teachers have really had to get a lot of supplements. It's going to be a big change, and I think ultimately it will be a positive change as teachers go back to the core of those textbooks to really drill into the Tennessee standards. When historically there's been a tradition of Tennessee not getting that advantage sometimes. So I'm super appreciative to the Textbook Commission for the work they've done in making sure that the choices we have meet the Tennessee standards. I mentioned community meetings. I want to mention the community meetings that we have scheduled. So we're sitting here on Wednesday. Yesterday was our first community meeting, January 17th. We have meetings on the 23rd, February 2nd, February 8th, and February 13th at varied times. So as an example, this coming Monday, in our professional development room in our maintenance building, from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m., there will be folks there to allow the public to come and review all the textbooks that are available.
And again, these dates and times are on our website. So wcs.edu, you can find it there.
I encourage you to check the website. So they're pretty much full day schedules. Some of them are mornings, some of them are afternoons, some of them are evenings, to make sure that everyone has an opportunity if they'd like to come look at the textbooks.
Okay, sounds good. We have a lot going on in the next few weeks, couple of months. So thank you for your time. We are out of it now, and so we're going to end our discussion. But there will be more next month, I'm sure. And thank you for joining us.